There's like a couple SaaS providers that we use that if they went down, it would just be like an absolute nightmare.
And so I announced it, and the screams and cheers were so loud, we set off the alarm system.
Make sure you're actually getting interviews before you worry about how well you're doing in them.
When you're a business, you don't care about fancy widgets or hover effects and things like that. When it comes to those apps, they don't need to be beautified, they need to be functional.
Today, I am joined by Danny Thompson. Now, Danny's actually a really special person to me. He probably doesn't even really know this, but Boot Dev's grown a ton in the last 2 years, and the Backend Banter podcast as well. But Danny was actually one of the first people that I met on tech Twitter, and even though he had a following of, I believe, over 100K at the time, was always just really gracious to me, like really appreciative of kind of what we were building at Boot Dev, liked the content, and, you know, hung out with me in some Twitter spaces. And so just right off the bat, Danny, I want to say thank you. I mean, we've come a long way, but you were kind of there at the beginning, and you were really helpful and gracious right out the gate.
Hey, I'm going to be honest. I didn't think it was going to make it. No, I'm so grateful that it did. No, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm super excited. I just had your friend, kind of a mutual acquaintance of mine, definitely more of a friend of yours, Lawrence Lockhart, on very end of last season. Super excited to finally get you on the pod as well.
Yeah, that's my brother Lawrence, man. Yeah, he's definitely like a big force in my life. You know, I've come to realize that there are some people that come in your life for like a particular reason. There's some people that stick around for a while. He's someone that I've come to realize that I will know and probably talk to on a regular basis until the day I die, regardless of tech or not. He's an amazing human being and someone I'm very grateful to call a very good friend. And so, amazing human being. If you haven't checked out that episode, check it out, y'all.
It's a fantastic episode. I think there's going to be a lot of parallels between that episode and this episode, in the sense that, correct me if I'm wrong, you and Lawrence kind of got into coding around the same time. Yeah. And I know you, like, Free Code Camp was a big... Do you want to give just like maybe the 3-minute story of how you got into coding and like what role Free Code Camp played, just to give people some background?
Yeah. The real short version of this is I was working in a gas station frying chicken, and my curiosity to join into tech was piqued because of an interview that I saw on TV. And because of that interview, I started researching. I found Free Code Camp. I started there, and I saw this thing after about a month or so that referenced Meetups. I didn't really know what Meetups were. At that time, I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and upon researching, I found out that Memphis had like a couple meetup groups, and I ended up going to one. And at this point in my life, you know, I had pretty much known like HTML and CSS. I made a very little JavaScript, like just barely touched JavaScript. And I made this application that basically, if you entered the URL of an image, it would return that image with like some coloring on top. It basically was like Instagram's worst nightmare. Like, it was a terrible filter. But I thought I could cure cancer with code, man. I was so excited. And I remember going to this meetup, and I instantly realized that I knew nothing, right? And the reason why I even found this meetup was because at that time I used Facebook. I haven't touched that thing in years, but at that time I used Facebook, and I was searching for meetups, and I came across a post from Lawrence. And Lawrence said he was going to be at this meetup. And he was already working in tech at that time. He was working at a chain called Fred's. But you walk in that room, and Lawrence is like a force to be reckoned with even at that time, right? Like, dude knew his stuff. He was so smart. He still is incredibly intelligent. But I remember, and this is a constant joking story that we tell back and forth, because I like totally you could tell I knew nothing about networking at that point, because I literally walk up to Lawrence. I muster up this courage. I was so nervous the whole meetup to talk to him. And I finally go to him, and I'm like, hey, man, I know you don't know me, but I saw that you were going to be here. So I came here because I knew you were going to be here. And so basically, I just wanted to say, you know, I really love everything that you're doing, and la da da da. And I think you're really cool, man. And I saw your post on Facebook, and I said, I got to be here. And he was like, okay. And he walked away. And I'm like, I now look like a stalker.
I'm
like,
a fanboy. Yeah.
There's no way that this doesn't come across terribly weird, because I think even in Lawrence's mind at that time, he thought the post was private only for his friends. And so the fact that I saw it freaked him out even more, because he's like, how did you see it? We've never met before. How are you seeing my private stuff? It just came across terrible. And so I left, and I was like, I suck. I'm terrible at this thing. And I remember going home, and then I came back like a month later, and we ended up hitting it off. And since then, I think I've known Lawrence now like going on 7 years. And so,
Wow.
incredible human being. We've led meetups together. We were on the same organizing team for meetups in Memphis, Tennessee for several years. I ended up branching out because I had a different vision for what I believed a meetup to be. And both the groups did very, very well. His group is still thriving in a great way. He still serves the Memphis, Tennessee community in a large way. I've done meetups now and events pretty much all over the world at this point for different faiths, religions, languages. We've kind of built communities now. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and we've built an amazing group called Dallas Software Developers Group. We actually just did a tech conference for charity in Dallas called Commit Your Code Conference. We did it under 3 months where I wanted to make a conference where, number one, it was accessible for everyone, right? I don't want income to be a barrier or a reason why someone doesn't have access to educational resources. And so I had just left a conference, a very big conference. I won't say the name because I absolutely love them, but I had come back, and at that meetup, I was talking about it, and someone said, it's my dream to kind of, if I'm being honest, attend that conference. I just can't afford it. And the thing that got me most interested in that comment was the fact that he had been working in tech for multiple years at this point. So it's not someone that's trying to break in or someone that's an absolute beginner. But when you really think about it, let's say the average tech conference is like $800. You spend $800. Then you got to pay for the flight. It's like $300, $400 if you live not too far away. You're already at $1,200. Now your hotel, it's another grand, give or take, right? $800, $700. You're out $2,000 just to attend a conference. If your company's not paying for it after the pandemic, I think a lot of companies have stopped paying for it the way they were previously. So it's $2,000 to attend a tech conference. So for me, I was like, what if we did a tech conference where the tickets were $30? And with that $30 ticket, we covered food for both days of the conference. We donated 100%.
That's already impressive. I mean, food ain't cheap these days.
Yeah, that was a challenge, and we could talk about it if you want to. But we donate 100% of all ticket sales to charity, and we don't keep a dime off of it. And the only difference between a $30 ticket and a $100 ticket is just how much you want to donate to charity. Me and my entire team, we donated our time. We had some amazing volunteers give back, but we made $0 off of it. And keeping up with the whole open source theme that we all know and love, we basically showed all of our financials publicly. We published everything. We published an entire financial postmortem, which detailed where every single penny went. So everyone was in the know of where their money was going. For us, since our goal isn't necessarily to make money, and I won't knock a conference for making money, they absolutely should. Our goals were just different for this particular one. But because of that, we kind of halted. Well, let me rephrase that. We try to get as many sponsors as we could at a very low rate. We're probably like 95% cheaper than the average tech conference because for us, our main cost is like covering the food and giving some swag or resources. Outside of that, it's not much. And so since our goal is so different, we're allowed to do these much cheaper sponsorships. We're already right now, as the time we're recording this, lining up everything for 2025. It was supposed to be a one and done conference, but because people asked for it so overwhelmingly, we had to kind of come back and do it again. And so now we're planning this out. But once we get enough to kind of cover all of our costs, we're pretty much going to shut the sponsorships off. So still trying to talk to as many sponsors as we can, but we really don't need to get $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 of sponsorship. It does, for us, we're not paying anybody. Nobody's making anything off of it. And so I know I kind of went on a weird tangent now that I'm realizing the original question. So I apologize for that.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I was gonna ask about Commit Your Code. I saw the social posts. I mean, it was not a small conference. There was a lot of people there. I saw the photos. It was awesome.
It did way bigger and better and made a bigger impact than I think I ever thought we could. To give you an idea, we did this the same week as AWS reInvent, and it wasn't by choice.
It's bold. Yeah.
There was a whole snafu. There was a whole weird thing, but we ended up trending globally, and I got hundreds of messages from people at AWS reInvent, people that I know were like, I'm here, but I only see posts about Commit Your Code. They're like, I've never had more FOMO in my life. And so obviously we did something right. But we only did that conference with less than 3 months of planning. And so and that's my bad. That's my fault. Like I just, mid-August, I had this idea in July, and I'm the type that I don't really like, I don't want to do something just because of spur of the moment, but if I can't shake the idea, I've got to do it fast. And so mid-August, Sunday morning, I woke up and I'm like, you know what? I can't shake this. I'm doing it. So 5 a.m., I literally made a post. We're doing a tech conference for charity. I don't know how we're doing it yet, but we are. Just be on the lookout. My DM started blowing up. Like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? How are you planning this for? The original dates were November. And I was like, I don't know. I just can't shake this. We have to do this. Like, it's on my mind. We have to do this. And really, the idea was never for it to be done more than once. It was a one and done kind of thing. That was the whole idea that I had. One and done, never changes. That afternoon, I made a video that said, here's my idea. I still haven't figured out how we're going to do everything yet because it's only been a couple hours of me actually trying to do this thing, but I'm hitting the ground running. And so the idea was tickets that are affordable. Everyone has access to the educational resources. We stream the entire thing online so that way those that cannot attend can still be a part of it. We will use our Discord for communication for all the online attendees. So there's plenty of networking, conversations, and we ended up having 340 show up for in-person. We had 5,500 online attendees. Online was completely free, but they had the option to donate to charity if they wanted to. We ended up raising over $10,000 for charity, and we did the entire tech conference with $11,500 of budget. We ended up, and the thing that got me the most was we had to be very creative and frugal with every single dollar. We had to make it stretch. But the amount of times people were recording and taking pictures of the food to share online, and we had like a string of a budget. I was really.
Did you fry some fried chicken?
No, but you know. I'll tell you this. The food, we did this in Yum Brand's headquarters. For those that are not in the know, Yum Brand is the parent company of several brands like Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC, et cetera, et cetera. And so originally they were like, hey, we would really like it for you to use our caterer since they're a neutral party. Mainly their concern is like having a competitor be the food vendor, which totally makes sense. Like, you know, if I'm, you know, at Pizza Hut headquarters and I bring Papa John's, it's kind of disrespectful, right? So like, I'm not going to do that, especially because one of the big things for us was they loved the mission so much they donated the space for us. And so we didn't have to spend anything on space because of that, which is obviously like a big cost savings just in and of itself. And so I said, hey, the caterer, you know, the costs are extremely high for what we're trying to do. It's going to eat up our entire budget. How would you feel if for catering, we brought like your brands? And they were like, well, that would work, but I don't know how you're going to do it. And I was like, neither do I. But I just know that if that option exists and we can save several $1,000s and we can make this stretch, let's figure it out. And so I had to, because at least where we're located in Dallas, there's no catering option for KFC, Pizza Hut, etc. So I had to go speak one-on-one with all the store managers and work out the logistics. So like gas station Danny really thrived in that environment. Like, yeah, that was my leverage, I guess. Like my big win right there was knowing how this works a little bit. So I was explaining how the logistics should work for them. It took a lot of planning on that part. We had to like plan this out a month in advance to kind of get them prepared. Obviously, because, you know, Taco Bell alone, I think we had like 500 plus tacos out of each location, right? So we had to have that going. The pizzas were the easiest one of them all. They're used to high volume pizza. KFC was like, how do we do this? And like, it's a lot of chicken coming out. Like, how do we get this done? And obviously for them, I was really happy that there was the store manager for that location was like, you have all these people that are going to have this. We need to make sure it comes out fresh and we need to make sure it stays that way. So how do you plan to do that? And I was like, let's start talking about that. And so a lot of planning went into that. And you know what? The number of people that were like, I haven't had this in years. And they were like just geeking out over it was really cool. And so, but the other thing was we had other things, like we had snack cakes everywhere. We had candy bars and we had chips and we had water all over the place and all this stuff. And people were like, man, none of this is behind a register. I was like, it's all free. And so just off of that alone, I think if you go to like a gas station, you know, some of these snack cakes are like $2 a pop, right? So, but for me, I was thinking, how do we create as much organic conversation as humanly possible? And how do we get developers actually geeking out together? And so we had devs geeking out over these snack cakes and they would congregate around it. And it's like, boom, y'all are talking and making friends. And then we had like these open networking sessions where people were having coffee and chatting and like those organic moments you can't really put a price on, for me at least. And so the coolest thing has been seeing how many people went there knowing no one, and now they've got friends that they're talking with on a daily basis. And I think that's like a major win.
I love that. So I've been preaching the idea of, I mean, so have you. It's not like, not like it's just me, but especially in the last few years, I feel like, I mean, when people are applying for jobs online, there's these crazy high volumes on both sides. You see there's 1,000 applicants to a job on LinkedIn or whatever. And so people know, or people are kind of finding out, that any sort of networking they can do is super valuable. And so I've been kind of preaching from the rooftops, please find meetups. Like, please try to find meetups, try to find people. Online's great, in person, way better. But I've always hesitated to recommend going to conferences to beginners for exactly the reason that you spelled out at the beginning, which is like, yeah, we're talking about like $1,300 sometimes, more if you have to travel. So the fact that you guys were able to put on a conference for $30, it's like, that's going to be worth it all day. You're going to meet so many people. And then who knows, maybe meetups spring out of that conference, right? I mean, I'm sure you have meetups going on the regular anyways, but like more meetups, right? Or it reactivates people and gets them going again. So, yeah, that's really impressive, man. I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I can tell you right now from firsthand, we've already seen meetups being activated. New organizers have started creating events for themselves. We've gotten overwhelming support of where people want to do this conference in their town. The only challenge is I obviously can't be there, right? So I can't gauge what they're going to do and stuff like that. So I basically put the entire blueprint out there. We even did a podcast episode. I'm the host of 2 podcasts. One of them is called the Programming Podcast that I do with Leon Noel. The other one is Modern Web Podcast that I do with my organization, This.Labs, that I work at. This.Labs, really great organization. The podcast is highly reviewed, over 6 years of episodes, amazing backlog. But this episode that I did with Leon Noel on the Programming Podcast, we talked about the entire strategy behind the conference. And it was basically the blueprint for anybody that wants to do this. They can run with it. You just can't call it Commit Your Code. Like, call it whatever you want. Call it your city's name or whatever. It's just because I can't guarantee what they're going to do, right? And so I don't want that on me. Like, Danny did this thing in Toronto. It's like, no, that's not me, man. But I really was happy with that. But the number of groups, I mean, several groups right now talking in Austin about doing an event, which I think is great. There's just people that haven't been to meetups in years that want to do something. I think that's a win. And so I'll be honest with you. This conference was supposed to be a one and done thing, right? And I've said it before. I'll say it again. Me and the organizer, I said it in my keynote. If y'all ask me right now if we're ever doing this again, the answer is no. Like, there's just no way possible. It was an exhausting experience, logistic, and that's my fault. Like, maybe I should have been gracious and given us a little bit of time, but something about that time limit was like the motivation to want to do the thing. I can't explain it, but there were 2 conversations in particular that were the reasons and the fuel for making us do this again. The first one was Chris DeMars, who is known as Salt and Burn on the internet. I love this dude. I liked him before, but I really genuinely love him now. Like, a lot of appreciation for him. His ideas and the way he approaches things is great, but just a fantastic human being. And I remember the first day, he was like, you have something special here. I was like, yeah. Like, people are always going to tell you nice things. He's like, no. I go to conferences every week. I'm traveling full time. This is my job. I'm telling you right now, you have something special here. You got to do it again. I was like, I don't really think so. And he gave his talk at the conference, and like every single attendee at his talk ran out to me. He's like, Danny, you have to do this again. And Chris came up to me. He's like, I'm telling you, I only said, if y'all want to see this again, make sure you talk to the person that makes it happen. They found the motivation to come find you at this conference to tell you that themselves. That has to tell you something. And I was like, okay. But then I didn't know this when I accepted the talk. I didn't know this when they were there. But for us, obviously, we ran this entire thing on a shoestring budget, right? Like, we didn't have a lot of money. The average tech conference that has a lot of money covers travel for speakers, right? They'll end up paying for their hotel, their flights. We didn't have that luxury to do that. It was a goal that I wanted to hit. We didn't hit it. I'm definitely trying to make sure that we hit it this year. Like, so I'm trying to have extra conversations, because that ate up me the entire time. Like, it was a lot of pain on my side, because I'm a very big believer in like value for time. And it really bothered me that we couldn't cover that. And so one of the people that I spoke to, his name was Nii, Nii. And Brother Nii over here, he literally paid for his own flight and travel and flew from Ghana to speak in Dallas, Texas. And so as I'm sitting, I'm like, number one, I didn't know this. You never put on like your talk that you're flying in from Ghana. So I had no clue that you were coming this far. So I was like, you have probably the highest level of authority to answer this question compared to anybody else. Do you genuinely believe it was worth the flight to come here? And we're sitting on this couch and we're talking. And he said, Danny, I would 100% pay for the ticket and fly again. It took him 2 days of travel to get there.
Yeah,
and he's
Ghana's not close.
And he's like, I would 100% fly again. And I was like, we had this conversation 1 hour before the conference ended. And so if we didn't have that conversation, I don't think we would do it again. But I walked up to all the volunteers and the organizers, and I was like, there's no pressure to any of y'all. You don't have to say yes. But do y'all want to do this again? And we're all bone tired, exhausted. Like, I lost so much sleep because of this. And they're all like, Danny, how could you ask us now? We're so exhausted. I said, well, the reason why I'm asking you right now is because in 30 minutes, I'm going to announce that we're doing it again. And so the question is whether you do it with us or not. I have no clue. Like, that's on y'all. And they were all like, well, Danny, if you're doing it, we'll do it again. Yeah, we'll do it again. And so I announced it, and the screams and cheers were so loud, we set off the alarm system. I did not expect that. And I freaked out because I'm like, oh my God, the fire alarm is about to go off. Like the sprinkler system. That's exactly where my mind went. But we just cheered so loud to set off whatever alarm that they had, which was cool. We recorded it, but because of the mics, I guess like noise suppression, you hear nobody cheering, but you do hear the alarm. So it's like, hey, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. But yeah, so because of that, we ended up agreeing to do it, and we just got the venue dates locked in. So September 25th and 26th, it will be back. We're adding in at least one more track. So it'll be Java, JavaScript, Cloud, which were the original 3. And we're adding in .NET. And I'm toying with the idea of adding a 5th track because it's been requested so much, a leadership track where we can have local leaders of organizations basically tell you how you could grow within the organization. Like, how do you become a better manager? How do you become a director? How do you do this and that? For example, the other one is like, how do you present something to your CFO? And so these are like some interesting talks that I think can help build more leaders. We're toying with that right now. It just really depends on a couple factors, but we're trying to make sure it's still worth $30 for people to come.
That's so cool. Well, I'm sure it's worth $30. I wish I was closer. That's really cool.
The way that I've said it is, if you buy that ticket, you buy the flight and the hotel, it often comes out to the same cost as buying a ticket at a regular tech conference.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have had a goal to go to more tech conferences for like a couple of years now, and I've never hit the goal. I went to like one last year. I was going to go to one this year, and then it was React Miami, and it fell on the same day that is the due date of my 3rd son.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Children are going to be there for 18 years. React Miami now, you know.
Not going anywhere. So I'm going to try to make it out to some more this year. And what you're doing sounds incredible. And like I said, especially for anyone listening to this, that's like, there's a lot of conferences that are out there that are great for like, you know, you're a director of engineering and you're trying to like scout recruits. The thing that's so cool about what you're doing to me is this is something that's genuinely great for people who are just starting out. Like, it's not cost prohibitive. You're going to meet other people with similar interests. On that note, I wanted to ask you about, just in the like couple of years that I've known you, you've had a really fast moving career. You're now the CTO at This.Labs, right?
Director of Technology.
Sorry. How big is This.Labs, by the way?
We're pretty sizable. I mean, we're definitely not like a large organization by any means, but, you know, roughly 70 people, give or take.
70's big.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not like, you know, 1,000 employee kind of location, but it's still pretty large. I feel very happy with a lot of the work that we're doing, some of the partners and organizations that we work with, and the way that we're growing. Our CEO, Tracy Lee, she's a force to be reckoned with, man. Like, she definitely is a big factor as to why I'm even there. And truth be told, like, I will not be shocked if you see us growing pretty rapidly. Some of the stuff that we're getting involved with, some of the things that we're doing, it's next level. And to be honest with you, man, we've gone viral on the internet for some of the stuff that we've done. But because of the NDAs that we have, the world will never know. And that sucks. And I mean, like, some stuff pretty recently we've gone extremely viral for. The organizations that we partner with, they know it, and obviously because that we keep doing stuff together.
Do you mean like the work that you did led
Yeah.
to like viral growth for the like client?
Not even growth, like stuff that has gone just viral on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Like people have made videos on some of the stuff that we've done, but
like
we
the
can
underlying
never publicly claim
technology,
it. Yeah.
and the changes kind of went viral. But it's like the people who worked on it, you guys are under NDA.
Yeah. There's stuff that people touch on a daily basis that don't even realize that we've had some part in. Like, so one thing that we can talk about publicly, we helped create the React docs with the React team. A lot of people don't even realize that, but we're publicly acknowledged for that. Even on the React docs itself, they talk about this.labs, and two of our like big contributors, which were managers and a senior developer that kind of helped out with that. Or one of them who's actually just recently moved, Dustin, incredible. But I mean, the stuff that we're involved with. Or, for example, Simone, matter of fact, I'll even plug him, by the way, our vice president of delivery. He's out of London. He wrote a book on Vue. So Vue 3, I keep it on my desk because I'm so proud of him. But Vue 3 for beginners, he's done so much in the Vue ecosystem. He's written a book, obviously, and all the good stuff. But the React docs we've done, we've done a lot of stuff with Stripe. I'm actually diving into Stripe a lot more as of recent. I did a video on it. I even did a Twitter space and a live stream with the team. It started with one particular thing, and I'll shout them out for this. I was on a Twitter space with them, and I was like on that like edge of like, do I do anything with Stripe, or do I put my engineering focus on something else? And they said one thing that kind of like threw me for a loop, and they were like, there's one market right now that we see that's currently undersaturated at the moment, but that's going to change. And I was like, well, what is that? And they were like, Stripe apps. We have built the way Stripe sees it is that your dashboard for organizations and all these businesses, your dashboard has apps integrated into it. And a lot of them are either front-facing apps that you're doing something manually, or the other ones are apps that have a lot going on in the background that are transferring data from one place to another, and it's doing a lot for you. But the way Stripe sees it is they see your dashboard hosting way more applications, and because of at least the way that I see it, you are using apps there because it's having inherent value to your business. So you're not watching an ad to get a free heart or a life to keep going, right? Like it has tangible business value. And because of that, companies are paying a lot more money for you to, number one, provide that service for them. But number two, they're going to stick around significantly longer than an app in the Play Store. And so because of that, this.labs, we've built several apps where we have several of the apps right now that are like at the top of the app store that we've built for other organizations, but we own one, and it's like one of the top apps in Stripe's app store right now. And so I didn't really know this going into it, and I started looking at the data. It is the Data Mapper app from MailChimp. And so essentially the idea is organizations that have these customers that are doing these transactions want to be able to communicate with them. Well, it's transferring that data back and forth. So now you can populate your newsletter or your customer reach out or responses. So for example, maybe you have an automated email that goes out after they commit a transaction, be like, hey, we want to verify that this was you. Here's what you bought. If this is you, fantastic. If not, please contact us so we can make sure that, you know, you hear something. You can get something automated from Stripe, but now this is like a personalized touch where the customer is actually interacting with the business. So if something is wrong, instead of getting a negative review or getting no contact with that customer, because we all know that can happen easily, right? Like they can't figure out where that communication was. You get a chargeback right away instead of you being able to say, hey, let me correspond with this customer directly. This is a great way to do that. And so that's just like one easy bare bones example, but there's so many use cases for that kind of information. And so at least being able to talk with your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we use Stripe at BootDev. Like there's like a couple SaaS providers that we use that if they went down, it would just be like an absolute nightmare. Not just from the sense that like, of course, the app would go down and we'd need to find another solution, but like there's nothing as good. Like the product is genuinely like Stripe is actually so goddamn good at like what it does that I would hate to have to move. Okay, so at the beginning of that, you said there's kind of an underserved market. Are you talking about like opportunity for developers here? Like developers working on top of Stripe as a marketplace, as a platform?
Pretty much, yep. And so obviously, I'm not drinking the Stripe Kool-Aid. I'm the type of person that I genuinely believe if there's an opportunity where people can benefit, I want to kind of share it. I have no financial incentive whether or not you do this or look into it, right? Like Stripe isn't paying me nothing. To be honest, they're actually getting a lot of free publicity because selfishly, I've been doing these live streams to try and get as much inside info as possible, but also best practices to build stuff off of because I want to kind of dive in here myself that I see. But people are starting to see that now, which I think is great. Like I've kind of helped them with their goal essentially a little bit. But the reality is, if you're trying to make apps, Google Play Store, Apple Play Store is cool, but I guarantee you the lifespan of that person using that app is going to be really small unless you're just like one of these major players like Candy Crush or something like that, right? But I can't think of many apps that are in the App Store that have been there for like a decade plus, right? But when you look at businesses, they don't need it to be fancy. They don't need an amazing UI. They need functionality, if anything. And so when you even look at the Stripe dashboard, like, and no hate to Stripe, but like this is not the most beautiful dashboard that I've ever seen in my life. It's bare bones. But when you're a business, you don't care about fancy widgets or hover effects and things like that. What you care about is like, where's my revenue? How many customers did it serve? Did anything go down? Do I have a chargeback? That's what you're looking for. And so when it comes to those apps, they don't need to be beautified. They need to be functional.
Yeah. In fact, like, I think a lot of developers don't realize this because, like, growing up with the internet, we see apps and we interact with them as consumers, and we obviously want like beautiful animations and UI UX. We want it to feel modern. And the goals and priorities of businesses using apps are completely different. It's all about functionality. Like I would sacrifice a beautiful UI in a heartbeat if I could just get my job done faster, right? I worked at a bank, and I mean not that banking software is, you know, the creme de la creme of software. Like it actually was a disaster. So I shouldn't praise it too much. However, it was a terminal. This is in 2014. I was on what was effectively a terminal. And the thing was, there was a teller standing next to me that had been working there for about 10 years. She could fly through her work using like keyboard shortcuts and commands and hitting F12 and F10. Like she knew everything that she had to do to get her work done. The UI was a disaster. Learning it was a disaster. But the bank was so hesitant to switch off, not because there wasn't like they didn't have money to do it, but because they were so worried about having to retrain their staff and that the new app, like once onboarded, wouldn't be as efficient. So they'd lose a lot of man hours, right? Because they pay, you know, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of tellers across the world, I'd have to imagine, these national banks. But so to bring all of this back, give me a little bit of information, because I know I'm missing some context. You're currently the vice president of technology.
Director of technology.
God damn it.
You're giving me promotions before my company does, man.
You referenced the vice president, right? Your friend that wrote the View book. If This.Labs is listening, Danny is actually the president of This.Labs. Okay, you are the director of technology at This.Labs. Before that, you were at AutoZone? Was that directly
Correct.
before This.Labs? And okay, This.Labs is a consultancy. AutoZone,
Yes.
were you working on like internal facing software?
Yes. No. I was over AutoZone.com, AutoZonePro.com.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize that. I kind of I made an assumption because it's a retail store. I was like, oh, they probably had like a lot of internal systems.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people make that assumption. I could tell you when I got there versus when I left, we had raised the online presence and shopping presence tremendously. When I left, they were doing, and I can say this publicly, this is not under any NDAs or anything like that, but they're doing like roughly $10 million a day in sales off of AutoZone.com. So and of course, like it's a Fortune 500. They're on the list in like the top 200s. So it's not like a small shop by any means. Their stock price is like, what is it at? Like $3,000 a share right now, give or take. So they're not there by luck. They're very, very strategic in what they do. With that being said, a lot of the stores still run COBOL. So like they got COBOL devs for days, man. But thankfully what we worked on was very modern. Their websites are very modern in regards to the tech stack that we ended up utilizing. It was a Java backend with React on the front end. So, and there's other teams using different other technologies, but I was over, and for my entire career, for whatever reason, I've just kind of found this niche to be involved with sales funnels of websites. So before AutoZone, other organizations, has always been the sales funnel of the website, basically helping guide customers through that. I love that mainly because if you're completing that purchase, at least my primary focus wasn't necessarily due to shady tactics. It was more so, do you have enough information? Do you feel comfortable in making that purchase? And so for me, it's always been, how do we educate the consumer more about what it is they've selected? And so that's been like the biggest guidance for my career. And that's, I think, probably the reason why I believe in like over transparency and information. Just because if you have more than enough information on hand to say, I like this or I dislike this, then you're a more educated consumer. And not even just consumer, it's like, what is it when you're taking in a tutorial, or what is it when you're like deciding on what tech stack should I use, or hey, this new technology emerged, is this actually worth my time? Instead of just being clickbaity, which I get it, people have incentive over likes and views. But I feel like if you can walk away from that thing saying, wow, I really understand this technology now, versus I got clickbaited here, they fear-mongered me, I'm terrified about everything, this FUD has really got me going, but you walk away not necessarily knowing what to do with it. And so for me, I feel like if you're educated versus emotionally driven into believing one thing or another, I feel like that is going to be a greater good. And so that's kind of the way that I've guided, not just the way that I develop software and solutions, but also the way that I approach social media and content and podcasting and speaking and just talking about things in general.
That's great. There's a lot of dark patterns out there. We could get into that. I wrote a whole article on how hard it was for me to cancel my gym membership and switch from Verizon to Google Fi. So I have a lot of opinions there, but they're all the obvious ones. It's a nightmare. A lot of this stuff should be illegal. Okay, so you worked on. Would you describe it as basically like e-commerce at scale, the AutoZone stuff?
Kind of. I would say we tried to reduce the number of steps at the point of purchase, which makes a better experience. We wanted to validate as much information as possible to make sure we weren't sending things that you bought online to the wrong location, which I think is great. Some of the things that I worked on just hit like the website as of recent as well, which I'm really proud of. So, I'm a sucker for like a good hover effect and stuff like that. So I got some of that on there. But there's other things too, where it's like, we need to make sure customers, and so this is one thing I will say that I love about AutoZone. I've always had this mindset, but I never had an acronym or a word for it. But AutoZone has something called Whittager, what it takes to do the job right. They don't really care about upselling you, because if we're being real, AutoZone, man, they are the player. Like when it comes to like, when you think about, and you can have whatever preference you want, but you have to realize to a certain degree, like when it comes to the consumer market, there's one business that's the largest, and that's AutoZone. And for them, they're like, hey, it's up to us to lose this business or not, right? So we don't need to upsell. We don't need to force sell. We don't need to push them so hard that they hate what it is that they're doing. And so they're like, hey, if you're doing an alternator repair, here's all the list of parts that you would normally see someone need to utilize in order to make this repair. We're not saying you got to buy it, but we don't want you to go home and then realize, dang, I should have had this part and I forgot about it. So it's like, I
will turn a 1 hour project into an 8 hour project because there's 7 trips to Home Depot in the middle. Yeah. God damn. Yeah, I totally get that idea.
So for us, it's stuff around that.
Yeah. So the software you were writing at AutoZone, you were a developer building the AutoZone like e-commerce logistics type of software. And now at This.Labs, you're a consultancy where you work for clients. I mean, I don't know if AutoZone's a client, but like they could be a client, right? Like AutoZone could be a client of This.Labs, and you go in and you do the work. Tell me a little bit about the dichotomy there. Like, do you prefer working on a product team like you were at AutoZone, or do you prefer this new consulting thing that you're doing, and what are the pros and cons?
Yeah, it's different because at least with AutoZone, there's one code base that I'm focused on. There's one solution that I'm trying to deliver, etc. When it comes to the consultant side, it's a different business because we're basically the problem solver of problem solvers. And so the business is bringing us in, either they have a problem that they need a solution for that they haven't figured out yet, which is A, or B, they don't have the bandwidth. And they're like, we need to get this done, but we also have this other initiative, and both are considered P0s. Like, this has to be done. And so what do we do? So we work with like Google, Microsoft, Stripe, DocuSign is a big one right now that we're working with.
It's crazy that they don't have the bandwidth. Like, that's actually like mind blowing just
a
to
lot
like
of people
realize
don't
that,
realize like the level of problems that they have that they're trying to deliver. And so for us, at least this labs, our reputation has been derived around two big things. Number one, our organization started around Silicon Valley, so we have a lot of those practices. We have a lot of developers from that area. And number two, so obviously to some organizations, they deem this to be like a great caliber of practice and developer that they can bring into the organization. And so we can help train a lot of their developers along some of those practices to kind of build that up, which for them is like a great value add because like, hey, not only are they building something, they're training us in the process, which is great, right? Or the second side of things is for the consultant is we know certain things about certain builds and solutions that they may not necessarily have the access to as of right now or the knowledge on. And so we've helped I can't say who or what, but we've helped organizations with massive migrations where it was constantly breaking things in the process. And they were like, we're actually abandoning this migration process because we can't figure it out. But then we'll be like, hey, you know what? We can help you with that. Don't worry about this. We'll make sure that this doesn't break anything in the process. We'll help build up XYZ. And we've been very successful in doing so. We've built up an entire blueprint around that just works. And I can tell you that this is not even for some small players, like very massive players have had issues in regards to migration. Or the other thing is, obviously, we've had a lot of success with Stripe in the apps. And this is kind of like where we're seeing a lot of organizations starting to do this. And if you look on, like, for example, DocuSign, we even have it on this .co/ I believe it's called Stripe. Not a Stripe, DocuSign. Let me see. This .co, just because I think it's interesting for people to check it out. If you look on the website, it's like something in really partnerships.docusign. That's what it is, or /DocuSign. But they've released their own app platform where they're building in, because a lot of people, when they think of DocuSign, they think of it just like a PDF filler, which to a certain degree, I totally see that side. They have so much going on in their ecosystem to where they want more organic applications solving problems for organizations as well. And so we're like a very big partner for that. We've built up, like, for example, Monday.com. That website, that application is in the DocuSign app store where people can kind of install that. But there's so much other stuff. The problem is I can't talk about some of the stuff that we've done. And so I'm trying to find some of the things, but very large organizations and players, they have solutions that they need built that they don't necessarily have the bandwidth for. And it goes all the way from a mid-sized organization with 50 to 200 employees to the FANGs of the world that kind of, they want a solution built and they don't either have the bandwidth or the focus to put it on, so they'll hire somebody to do it for them, or they have such a complicated problem where they're like, we need help and we just can't figure this out. And that's where we also come in.
As a developer, like as a solo developer working for a company, you're always selling development services at some level, right? If you're employed by another company, even if you're working on a product, you're always selling at least your own services. And now working for this .labs, there's 70 of you. You're not just, it's like, you know, an individual working at this .labs is selling their services to this .labs, which is then going and selling services to another client. The reason I think that you might have a unique perspective on this question I'm about to ask is because you're now so much in the services game. Everyone's worried that AI is taking jobs, right? Like, what's the future of this .labs? Are you guys concerned that someone's going to not hire you as consultants because they can just ask ChatGPT about how to migrate their database? How's that, what's your future sight? What's your idea going forward on this?
I mean, AI is not going anywhere, right? We're doing a lot of work with AI, RAG modeling and LLMs and all the good stuff. A lot of these consultants out here, and we're not at the top end by any means. We're definitely not at the low end, but some of these companies are charging $400, $500 per hour. If we were in a situation where AI could take that away, don't you think that would be the first thing that they'd be cutting? Hey, we don't need to pay this person $500 per hour to be in here. I see a lot of these posts, especially from like a consulting side. You have to imagine every consultant out there is looking at this stuff, right? I can tell you right now, I will say this. I genuinely believe there will be a time and a place where AI takes over software development roles the way that we see them today. I don't know if that's going to happen before I retire, but it's definitely going to be somewhere around there, right? And the roles will just evolve into something else. That's just kind of the way that I see it. And people can say I'm being naive or I don't see something the way that they see it. That's fine. I can tell you right now, in regards to the paychecks, I don't see that going anywhere. And I can tell you right now, very confidently, a lot of these consulting organizations out there are in a very similar boat. They don't see those $500 an hour billables disappearing anytime soon. And so because of that, if they're not as worried as social media allows you to believe you to be worried, I think that should be a very reassuring effect, because the average dev that's individual is not charging $500 an hour. And so if you're not charging 500, you probably shouldn't be worried about it. That's just my take on it. There's so much I could talk about. There's so many angles we can go down. But if you take away anything, I don't think you should be worried about it the way a lot of these fear-mongering posts would have you believe.
I just hired our, oh no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our sixth full-time developer here at Boot Dev. We've been doing as much possible testing and experimentation as we can with AI, right? To see what parts of our workflows we can make more efficient, automated. And I mean, we're using it as much as we possibly can, but it's not stopping us from hiring and moving forward. Here's some, okay, so this is like a follow-up question, maybe a more specific question. Kind of the modern version of LLMs, GPT-4 basically came out beginning of 2022, right? Which was just kind of at the tail end of what many of us would consider to be kind of maybe the tech bubble, like the tech hiring bubble of 2020 and 2021. And that bubble like kind of started to burst. Like the layoffs started actually before AI came out. Like it wasn't like a cause and effect thing where like AI came out and then all the layoffs happened. Like all the layoffs happened first, and then later like AI really started to get a lot of hype. So I wanted to ask you, like, I think a lot of people have conflated those events in the sense that like attributing mass layoffs and a lot of issues with hiring more to AI than might be deserved. I'm leading the question too much. I want to get your thoughts on like those two events, basically interest rates spiking and AI coming out, and which one of those two things actually had more effect on developer jobs.
Yeah, there's a couple factors, and some that I don't even think that you hit on. AI, as of right now, I haven't seen anyone in a software development position be replaced by AI. I do believe AI will be replacing some roles, especially when we're talking about like AI agents, which is where I believe in 2025 and 2026, this is going to be like, if you're interested in AI in any way, shape, or form, that is the area to be focusing in. I've seen some amazing, mind-blowing things come out through AI. One in particular, I got to experience and mess with and talk with an organization that has basically created a solution for debt collecting. And essentially they are automating the debt collectors to where they can make the phone calls and do the exact same script that a debt collector follows. But the voice sounds very authentic and real. And they're having a great rate of actually collecting the debts. And wow. Because of that, it's automating quite a few of the call center positions. That's the kind of automation that I see. I don't see anything in the realm of automating a developer. There's just too much. Let me give an example. 3 days ago, I'm building something in Claude, right? Claude is fantastic. Anthropic is great. It took 22 versions to create a login flow. And it was 1/10 of what I was hoping for, right? So it can create some task. And I know the first thing that I always hear, especially on Twitter, is like skill issue on prompting. It's like, no, these are very well thought out prompts. But if you're going in with a very basic use case, you'll get a very basic response, right? As you start making the response and the focus more complex, it becomes significantly more difficult to get exactly what you're looking for. And so I don't see it going anywhere. Like, especially when we're thinking more complexity and more solution-driven items, right? It can help increase the productivity because it ended up, I think it was like an hour worth of prompting to get what I needed. It was 1/10 of what I needed, but it ended up taking out some of the manual process, and I could focus more on like the logical and a lot of the problem-solving breakdown that I needed to do. I could focus on that as opposed to, can you style this thing like this? And can you make this form look like this? The rest of that I can do manually to match like whatever Figma docs that I had. But 22 versions, like it just took forever. So I don't see that being a use case. So Now, when we talk about 2021, 2022, it was the height of the pandemic. And a lot of people don't look at this. Because the entire world was at home, the entire world was using the internet and websites and online shopping at a degree that we have never seen in our history and probably will never see again. And so because of that, when you're looking at projections, no organization, a lot of the organizations, even the FANG ones, were not thinking about it like, whoa, this is going to stop. They thought this was going to be the new trend for user habit, right? And so they
it's so
were
easy to stroke your own
overhiring.
ego, right? Like daily active users is so high now. Like we could grow again next year. Look at how great we're doing.
Yeah. And so because of that, they really didn't know what to do. And that's when we saw all of these users, all these companies basically saying, okay, we're hiring people even though we don't have work for them now, but because of where we're going in this growth, we're easily going to have work for them, but we can't get caught in a situation where we're in growth mode, and we don't have the people or the bodies to facilitate that. So they started over hiring. Like, you know how many people I talk to on a regular basis that were like, yeah, I'm here. I don't have no work right now, but I'm just keeping my head down. We all know that was happening. A lot of people like to glaze over that fact, right? And so we know that was happening at the big orgs, small orgs, all around, because they just didn't know what to do with what was happening. Well, interest rates went up. They start paying a lot more. The growth stops because people are going back to work and starting to move around and travel again and this and that. And companies realize, whoa, this was like a perfect storm of a situation. And we just overhired in the largest way possible. We need to start offsetting some of this. I think that was a big factor here. I think another big factor, and I hate even saying this, was the number of people that got hired in at the entry level missed a lot of foundational items. And because of that, the companies almost felt burned by hiring them. And which sucks, right? We don't want that ever happening. But I feel like a lot of them went in and didn't really lift up or elevate the idea of like these hires that don't come from a lot of strong background. We can hire them a dime a dozen, but they lack so much. It makes it really hard to make that case anymore. And the reason why I can even support that is I've started doing these events and meetups where it's like a meetup for CEOs and CTOs of organizations. And one common thing, because of course I'm a big advocate for a lot of the local talent that we're hiring here. We even do a cohort program with our meetup group. We don't monetize it. It's free, but we help bring up and really give them the skills needed to talk about, right? And so they build a project together over the course of 6 weeks, being guided by a professional software developer in the industry, and they build something that's actually worth talking about. So I'm at these meetups and I'm talking about it. And one CEO finally said, Danny, you know, we don't have a talent shortage. There's no shortage of talent. Our big issue right now is a shortage of quality talent. He's like, think about it, Danny. If I hire someone and I just find out like, man, they just miss so much foundational elements, even for a junior dev, and we're training them and we're building them up and we spend too much doing that, right? Now, 2-month mark, they're finally doing something worth talking about. Not worth talking about, but they've built up the foundation and they start contributing. At the 6-month mark, I gotta gauge them whether they were a good hire or not, right? But if I spent half of that time just building up their foundation, and then half of that time now they're starting to just get used to the code base, they're not even contributing yet. So it's like, what do I have to gauge them off of their performance? How much do I bite before I'm like, this is a lost cause or a good cause? And so because of that, we're hesitant to even hire someone at that level, which sucks for a junior. But it also was something that was written on the wall for a long time with the way people were being churned out. The hope was once they got in, they would just work their behinds off to kind of build up. But then you have this other side of where people are like, hey, you shouldn't have to work hard to build this and that, yada, 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 which I do agree to at a certain extent. But I think they missed that messaging when it's like you've done so much to shift your circumstances in life that you can't forget, like, you're here temporarily until you can prove that you can be here forever, right? I've always said, and I still believe this, that until you hit the first year in tech, you've got a job. Once you hit that first year, you now have a career, right? And so it's like, what do you do to get to that first year mark to make sure you've built a career for life as opposed to a job that will keep you around for a short period of time?
I love that way of framing it. The first year, it's a job. After that, you start building a career. Because if you get laid off or fired in that first year, it's going to be almost as hard to find that second job as it was to find the first. Once you've got that 12 months under your belt, it really does get significantly easier after that. And to your point of like, okay, so there was overhiring in 2020, 2021, and the hope, I wouldn't even say the expectation from my perspective. I actually was a manager at that time, so I can just speak from personal experience. But like, yeah, the hope is that you hire these juniors and like you said, they work their asses off and they get really good so that in 6 months, a year time, they're contributing. But there was almost a zeitgeist in the air of like, there's such a shortage of developers. Companies are hiring. They're hiring so many people. They're paying them so much money. They're giving so many benefits just to get warm bodies in the floor or in the door that like you almost felt no pressure as a developer. I mean, not to say there was no developers working hard. Of course there were, but like from a very high level, there wasn't nearly as much pressure as there is today. Like inside of orgs where layoffs have been happening, now there's tons of pressure to perform at a really high level. I didn't feel that pressure in 2020 and 2021. Not at my own company and not like from the news and the way people were talking online.
Well, it's for several factors, right? It's a lot of these people don't even think about it. And so for me, at least, I understand humans, right? I don't understand a lot in the world, but I understand humans and I understand how we operate and think. And so one thing that a lot of people don't realize is for many years, tech was not at a competitive level, regardless of how they think about it. Every other field in the world, you've always had to compete. You've had to showcase like, hey, I can execute XYZ. Here is proof of what I can do. Like any accountant, they've had to compete for their roles. Any lawyer has had to fight for their roles. With tech, it was like I could sneeze and it could sound like the word JavaScript, and I found myself in an interview. Now we're at a stage where the competition has found the field of tech, like it's found every other field. And the reality is, software developers have never had to think about this. And because of that, they've found themselves in a very difficult situation because they've never had to advocate for their contributions in an organization. And this isn't even a junior level problem. These are managers and directors that I'm meeting with and helping them fix their resumes and stuff. Cause they're like, I don't even know what to write on this thing. They're fixing up their LinkedIn's like, I've never had to touch this before. Like I had recruiters fighting for me to have a conversation with them. And I was like, be gone, witch. Like, I don't need to talk to you right now. Right. And so now it's like, you forgot my number. And they're like, you told me be gone, right? I don't need to call you anymore. There's so many options. And so because of that, one prime example, in February of this year, I was talking to a senior developer with, I think he had 9 years of experience. One of those, I can't remember what, but he was laid off in February. We jumped on a call in September and he's like, I haven't gotten a single call back. Like this entire time, not a single one. And I see this all the time online, right? And it's like, it sucks when that happens. But when I'm looking at all his stuff, what he presents, it's like very obvious to me why he wouldn't get a call back. There's nothing that I could go off of on his resume, his LinkedIn, anything there that tells me what he's done in this organization. I just see the start date and the end date, and that's it. And I'm like, you haven't given them a reason to call you. And so we did one call. We kind of worked everything out. Within 4 weeks, he's starting a new job. And it's like, crazy. If you knew this the entire time in February, you could have had a job again in March instead of burning your entire savings to maintain the lifestyle for your family, right? And you cut back on all this stuff. You suffered for 6-7 months, but it's because you're not seeing some of these basic items. Now, I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows. You jump on a call with me and your whole life changes. No. Sorry. I wish I had the magic sauce like that. But it's like, if you don't give yourself a fighting chance, how can you expect anybody else to develop it for you? And so when you're not competing with the entire global marketplace, you can't focus on providing the bare minimum to have an amazing conversation.
Boot Dev has a conversion rate on our landing page, right? When I send 10,000 people to our landing page that are interested in learning to code and they land on it, 15%, somewhere between 15 and 20%, which is actually pretty high if I do say so myself. Go on to create an account. And then, some percentage of those, I can't remember the next step in the funnel. I guess I'd have to do some math, but long story short, 10,000 people hit the homepage, 1 to 2% go on to actually purchase a paid membership rather than stay on the free membership. I wish more developers, when they're marketing themselves and their services, thought more about effectively the conversion rate of like their resume and their LinkedIn profile getting in front of people. Because I hear the same thing. It's like, I've applied to 200 jobs. I haven't heard anything back. It's like, okay, it could be bad luck. That's always a factor. It could be bad luck. Could be that your conversion rate's awful. Like, it could be that your resume is so bad that you're going to need to send 10,000 resumes before you get lucky enough to get a call back. And that's a very common problem. Most people I meet are not thinking about their resume and they're not taking it seriously. It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've opened a resume, clicked through the very first link in the resume, and it's a broken link. There's a very obvious flow that a hiring manager is going to go through when they get your resume and they glance for 4 seconds, and that 4 seconds gives them enough confidence that they want to spend another 10 seconds looking at your resume. There's very obvious steps they're going to take. They're going to click through to the projects. They're going to go check you out on LinkedIn. And if they immediately are finding broken links, missing profile pictures, like it breaks down so fast. So I really like that story of like this guy effectively increasing his conversion rate and then going out and applying a bunch and finding a job fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, here's the simple thing. A lot of software developers, they believe like they should bury the lead when it comes to their LinkedIn, their resume, just because they're not thinking about, again, you don't work on resumes on a daily basis. So obviously it's going to be hard for you to like pinpoint where it is, right? And to be honest, a lot of managers and directors, they read resumes. So they're like, they know what they're looking for when they read it. But they don't realize that by the time they usually see a resume, it's been filtered out by thousands of others, right? So they just kind of read the entire thing. For me, I've often said, when you read your resume, you should be thinking, if you didn't know the person that for the resume that you're reading, right? Even though it's your own, just assume it's as a blank individual. Where would you start a conversation? What point would make you have a conversation? If your bullet point says you worked on the landing page of a site, cool. Who hasn't? Right? Like, what do you want me to ask you? Or if you said, hey, I built this 404 page. Cool. What did that do? Did it help capture customers that were abandoning the site because they couldn't find out where to go and redirect them? Did you see an increased number of people being led on the website instead of drifting away? Or did you create a newsletter component on your website that ended up creating 50,000 new customers being added to the newsletter? Those are impactful points that you could talk about versus I worked on the landing page. And so now it's like, what ends up having you have a more stronger conversation where you can win versus just random points? Because for a lot of people, they think of their resume and their LinkedIn as a checklist item on a to-do list. Like, I got to do this thing, so let me get it done. But the reality is they don't think about like how to set you up for the first part of the conversation. Because so many devs, and I see this every single day, so many devs think about interviews 3 and 4, like they're so focused on that, but they forget they still have to get into interview number 1. And oftentimes that is with a person that has no technical bearing. They are there, and the example that I often give is they are a bus driver, and they're trying to find as many passengers as possible that equate to this job description to drop them off, because the way they monetize that conversation and that relationship is by somebody getting that job. They don't monetize it. They don't get paid for anything by being nice to you. So once you understand the dynamics of this relationship, once I realized that, I was like, oh, I no longer take it personal if they ghost me. It's just like, I don't match that job description. I'm not going to convert or be a passenger on that bus. They don't understand tech. They don't know the difference between React and Angular or Java and C#. They're given a page that says, I need this. So they're just trying to find people that match this and convert them over to somebody who does know more. And so how are you appealing to that person that doesn't know the first thing about AWS?
Interviews 3 and 4 are interesting because, at least from my perspective, if you do, as you do them, you get better at them. It's basically impossible to do interviews 3 and 4 100 times and not get a lot better at doing them. Because in the interview, you're getting, even if you're not like, I've heard complaints that like I did an interview and then afterwards they didn't tell me anything that I did wrong and I got no feedback. That can happen, but you're always getting feedback, even if it's just like an eye roll in the middle of like your story that you're taking way too long to explain. There's all of this feedback coming at you live during the interview that if you're paying attention, you can kind of pick up on. Whereas the first step of the process, the applying with a resume, you oftentimes do genuinely get no feedback. And so making sure that that's not your problem, like you said, kind of optimizing for that first and then worrying about the interview later seems to make a ton of sense to me. Like, make sure you're actually getting interviews before you worry about how well you're doing in them. I want to really quickly, because we've been talking about jobs, we've been talking about resumes and stuff, just plug your LinkedIn stuff. I know that you've made several courses on LinkedIn about this kind of thing. And I talk about LinkedIn, I talk about resumes, and I feel like I have some good advice from a high level, but I'm not like a LinkedIn expert by any means. I haven't spent a ton of time on the platform. Can you tell people just a little bit about those resources and plug those?
Yeah, they're 100% free. I don't monetize it in regards to like people having to pay for a course or something like that. I didn't want to create something where it was like your entry into tech that could change your life is being behind this paywall that's a crazy amount of money. To be honest, the reviews that I have on it, man, I could be charging $1,000 for this course right now. I know I would get it. I know, because people talk about it. It's been added to more colleges' curriculums. A lot of colleges, matter of fact, even our Discord, we just had somebody join in yesterday. They were like, my professor told the entire class to join this Discord. And so it's like, it's a great resource in that regards, right? Like, so for us, we don't monetize it, but you can look for on YouTube. It's called the LinkedIn series. It's a 4-part episode series item where I interview 4 different recruiters and hiring managers to see what they're specifically looking for. It's been a very big eye-opening experience for a lot of people trying to get a job. It's completely free. And the other one is I created a course on LinkedIn with LinkedIn Learning, and I fought tooth and nail, and I got it. That was the only make or break for me to do this or not. But it is completely free, whether or not you have LinkedIn Premium. So you're allowed to watch it for free. And it is, you can go to dthompsondev.com and you'll see like all my links there. But that link is also there, and it's like a 30-minute course. It doesn't replace the LinkedIn series. It targets something different, but they supplement each other. And so I really advise people even to start there, and then you can kind of, that way you walk into the LinkedIn series like with a high level idea of like, this is what I need, and then you can kind of go the other route. We're going to be doing a refresh of the LinkedIn series real soon as well. It's been a couple of years, but to be honest, every single point in there works. It's worth its weight in gold. It's helped thousands of people all over the world land jobs. It works no matter your country or continent, as far as I'm concerned. It works everywhere. But more so, it's not just a LinkedIn playbook, but it gives you an idea how to approach conversations with anybody in a hiring capacity. So dthompsondev.com, you can find all my links, or commityourcode.com for the conference. We're accepting speakers right now as we speak. Obviously, at the time of recording, it's Christmas time. So we're planning out in advance, but we're trying to hit the ground running on that one. So you can find everything there.
Amazing. And just, I want to personally vouch for this content. So I did a video for Free Code Camp. It was called Learn How to Get a Programming Job. This is about a year ago. It's at over 3 million views now. And I reviewed your LinkedIn profile on the video. That was one of the LinkedIn profiles I went over, because I was going through like all of my connections, and I was like, this is one of the ones. Like, this is one of the ones I want to use an example. So go check out Danny's LinkedIn. I mean, you also post a lot there. Any last things you want to plug before we wrap up? Thank you so much, man. This has been a great episode.
Thanks for having me. The last thing that I'll plug is y'all plug Backend banner, boot.dev, all that good stuff. But the one thing I'll even plug is the listeners. Like, y'all are the ones doing the hard work. I don't think a lot of people celebrate that because they don't recognize that sometimes. If you're either in tech or trying to break into tech, it's not an easy task by any means. Like, it's an easy job when I compare it to like manual labor, but there's so much work that goes involved to being a big force in this field in order to have a decent paying job. Even when some of these companies where you can quote unquote coast, you're still having to skill up. So celebrate yourself. And please, if you're trying to break into tech, give us a reason to celebrate you. Simple as that. Like, I don't get a paycheck when somebody gets a job. Nobody cuts me a check saying, Danny, here's your cut. I just need a reason to celebrate you. So please give me that reason. I'll scream it from the mountaintops. Like, this person that just DM'd me out of nowhere to let me know, like, hey, they got a job at the age of 40 plus, right? I'm literally about to make a post for them right now. They don't cut me a check for it. Nobody gives me anything, but I just love celebrating them. So please, if you heard this episode, if it helped you in any way, shape, or form, the only payment that I ask for, and I do ask for payment, is that you help somebody else along the way. If you got in and the door was open for you, keep it open for somebody else. That's all I ask. I'm Danny Thompson. I'm loving everything that I do. And if there's a way I can celebrate you, give me that reason.
Incredible. Danny Thompson, thanks so much, man. Talk to you later.